Okay, so today we're tackling a massive, incredibly high-stakes topic: government overreach in tax collection. You know, when the state comes knocking for alleged unpaid taxes, that power dynamic, it can feel incredibly one-sided. It literally feels like they hold all the cards, right? Like the whole deck is stacked against you. But do taxpayers actually have rights that can halt the government in its tracks? Can you push back when the machinery of the state targets your livelihood? Well, that is exactly what we're going to unpack today in this explainer.
So, can the taxman just freeze your bank account? It's a terrifying yet completely relatable question for, well, any business owner, entrepreneur, or even just a regular individual taxpayer. Imagine this. You wake up on a Tuesday morning, you log into your banking portal, and bam, your operational funds, your payroll, your hard-earned savings, they are entirely locked down by the state. You can't authorize a transfer, you can't pay your vendors, and you certainly can't pay your employees. It sets up this classic David versus Goliath conflict. Now, obviously, the state has immense sweeping power to collect what it believes it's owed to keep public services running. But where does that power actually end? Like, what stops Goliath from just crushing David before the fight even legally begins? And that brings us to the specific legal battle we're breaking down today. It's called Sumrot Marble, Granite and Tiles versus Union of India. Specifically, this is CWP number 1745 of 2025, an absolutely crucial case heard recently in the Himachal Pradesh High Court. Now look, I want to be clear. This isn't just some dry, abstract legal jargon tucked away in a dusty law library somewhere. This represents a real operating business. These are people who buy and sell materials, who manage supply chains, who have families to feed. And they decided to fight back against what they experienced as this unstoppable, coercive government machine. They took a stand, and the court's response, well, it kind of changes the game for everyone else.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the bank account freeze.
Legally speaking, this aggressive tactic is defined as recovery proceedings via bank account attachment. It sounds highly clinical, right? Very standard and bureaucratic. But in practice, it is a devastatingly coercive government action. In our case, the Union of India used this exact tactic to essentially seize total control of the business's funds. Think about it. By attaching the bank account, the state completely paralyzes the taxpayer's ability to operate. It is literally instantaneous financial asphyxiation. You can't pay employees, you can't buy supplies, you literally cannot conduct commerce. Now, the government's logic is often that, securing the funds prevents capital flight. But the reality for the business? It acts as the ultimate strong-arm move to force immediate compliance. It effectively bypasses any meaningful dispute resolution simply because the business is bleeding out.
Which brings us to Section 2, the 10% shield.
So the Himachal Pradesh High Court laid out a very specific, chronological path to halt these aggressive state actions and restore power to the taxpayer. It's a strict two-step process. Step 1, file an appeal. You have to formally, legally contest the tax demand by filing the proper paperwork. You basically have to go on the record saying, hey, I dispute this assessment. Step 2, make the pre-deposit. Because let's face it, you can't just say, I disagree, and then walk away to avoid paying while dragging the process out for years and years. You have to put some actual skin in the game. You must commit financial resources up front to prove your appeal is serious and not just a delay tactic. These two steps, they have to be taken sequentially and completely to trigger the massive legal protection we're analyzing today. And the crucial metric here, it's exactly 10%. This number isn't just pulled out of thin air. The court highlighted that a mandatory pre-deposit of precisely 10% of the disputed tax amount is required. Not 50%, not the whole shebang, just 10%. And once you pay this specific fraction, it acts as an absolute legal shield. It proves to the court and to the state revenue department that you're engaging with the legal process in good faith. You're willing to lock up a portion of the disputed funds to secure your right to be heard. And the pivotal moment that 10% clears the bank, it instantly legally changes the power dynamic of the entire dispute. You transition from a vulnerable target to an actively protected appellant. Because once you hit that 10% threshold, attachment is impermissible. The High Court explicitly ruled that if the taxpayer has filed their appeal and paid that mandatory 10% pre-deposit, the government absolutely must back off. Full stop. The account freeze is strictly prohibited from that moment forward. You see, the state could not hold your operational bank account hostage while the appeal is actively being reviewed and decided by the appellate authorities. The law essentially looks at the machinery of the state and says, stop. You have your 10% security. Now unfreeze the business's lifeblood so they can survive while we figure out who's actually right here.
All right, moving on to Section 3. Section 79, tool, not punishment.
To really understand exactly why the court ruled this way, we have to look at Section 79 of the CGST Act. This is the exact section of the law that dictates how the state is permitted to recover tax debts. It outlines the authorized methods the government can use to collect money it's legally owed. Things like standard collections, seasoned goods, or, yes, attaching bank accounts. But the essential concept to grasp here is that word authorized. The government's power under this section is not limitless. It has very strict procedural boundaries. I mean, it was written to ensure the government isn't left empty-handed by actual defaulting tax evaders, right? But it was never, ever intended to be a blank check for government overreach against legitimate businesses that are just disputing a claim.
And this brilliantly illustrates the heart of the court's decision, the critical difference between a recovery tool and a punitive measure. The High Court heavily emphasized that Section 79 is strictly a recovery tool. It must be used only when legally justified to secure a debt that is finalized and legally collectible. What the state was doing by freezing the account, or actually scratch that, more accurately, keeping it frozen long after the appeal was filed and that 10% good faith deposit was made, crossed a massive legal line. It crossed over from securing a debt into becoming a punitive measure. They were actively punishing the taxpayer for disputing the claim. They were effectively trying to starve them out, which the court ruled is absolutely impermissible and a total abuse of the section of the Act.
Let's look at the bigger picture. Section 4, Protecting Due Process.
So why does this ruling actually matter to everyday business owners who might never even set foot inside a courtroom? Because it establishes a vital precedent that radically levels the playing field. First up, it reinforces statutory protection for appellants. That means the legal system is intentionally designed to protect you and your livelihood while you defend yourself. You are not presumed guilty to the point of financial ruin. Second, it explicitly condemns coercive recovery. The state cannot use intimidation tactics, heavy-handed threats, or financial strangulation to force a settlement out of you. And third, it prevents bypassing due process. The government cannot simply ignore the established rules of the game just to strong-arm a taxpayer into paying up. They have to follow the prescribed steps, fully respecting the taxpayer's legal rights at every single stage of the journey. The judgment makes one thing incredibly, undeniably clear. It condemns coercive recovery actions that bypass due process. This is the ultimate takeaway I want you to lock into your memory from today's explainer. Statutory protection places a hard, unyielding limit on state power. The government simply cannot use brute force to collect taxes if it means trampling over the legal due process owed to every single citizen and enterprise. The law demands fairness, and it demands that even the state, with all its vast resources and authority, absolutely must play by the rules. Which leads us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Where exactly is the line between legitimate tax recovery and state overreach? Now, in the case of Sumrot Marble, the court gave us a clear, undeniable 10% boundary line. But this explainer asks a much larger question about that constant, delicate balancing act of power between us, the citizens, and the government. Like, how much power should the state really have to secure its revenue? And at what point does that power become tyrannical? It's a powerful reminder that understanding how the law is structured and knowing your inherent rights is for sure always your very best defense. Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I will see you next time.